Many people believe defeating a narcissist means making them apologize, admit their lies, or finally recognize the pain they caused. But that almost never happens. The real victory is much deeper and far more personal. A narcissist feels defeated the moment they realize they can no longer control your emotions, manipulate your decisions, or define your self-worth. In this video, we will explore 5 powerful signs that reveal a narcissist knows they have truly lost their grip on you. You will learn why their behavior changes, what these reactions actually mean, and how understanding these patterns can help you protect your peace instead of getting pulled back into the cycle. This is not about revenge or proving you are stronger than them. It is about recognizing the psychological shift that happens when you reclaim your confidence, set healthy boundaries, and stop feeding the control they once depended on. Once you understand these signs, you will stop looking for dramatic endings and start appreciating the quiet power of emotional freedom. That is when the narcissist's influence begins to fade and your healing truly begins. Sign number 1. They stop treating you like an easy target. One of the clearest signs that you have truly defeated a narcissist is not that they suddenly apologize, admit their mistakes, or acknowledge the harm they have caused. In fact, most narcissists rarely do those things because accepting responsibility threatens the carefully constructed image they have built of themselves. Instead, one of the first and most meaningful changes you will notice is that they stop treating you like an easy target. For a long time, they may have believed they could predict every single one of your reactions. They knew exactly which words would make you feel guilty, which criticisms would make you question yourself, and which emotional tactics would pull you right back into the relationship. They became comfortable assuming that no matter how badly they behaved, you would continue explaining yourself, defending your intentions, or constantly trying to earn their approval. That confidence gave them a powerful sense of control over your life. But everything changes when you begin the process of healing. As you grow emotionally stronger, you start recognizing manipulation for what it truly is, instead of taking it personally. You stop feeling responsible for fixing problems that were never yours to solve in the first place. Rather than reacting with fear, anger, or desperation, you respond with calm boundaries and clear thinking. This shift is incredibly unsettling for a narcissist because their whole influence depended entirely on your emotional reactions. When those reactions disappear, they lose one of the most important tools they relied on to maintain control. Suddenly, the conversations they once dominated no longer go the way they expected. Their guilt trips no longer produce guilt inside you. Their silent treatment no longer sends you into a state of panic. Their criticism no longer convinces you that you are unworthy. They realize that the person they once manipulated has become someone they can no longer easily influence. This does not mean they respect your boundaries overnight. In many cases, they may test you repeatedly to see if your new confidence is genuine or just temporary. They might try to provoke you with insults, bring up old arguments, create unnecessary drama, or suddenly become unusually charming. These behaviors are often desperate attempts to determine whether the old, reactive version of you still exists somewhere inside. But when you remain consistent and refuse to engage in their emotional games while continuing to protect your peace, something significant happens. They begin to understand that their familiar tactics simply no longer work. That realization can frustrate them deeply because it forces them to face a situation they can no longer easily control. The greatest transformation is not actually happening inside the narcissist. It is happening inside you. Your confidence no longer depends on their opinion of you. Your value no longer changes because of their criticism. You stop chasing explanations, stop trying to prove your innocence, and stop carrying the heavy responsibility for their emotions. Instead, you become someone who values personal peace over conflict and self-respect over outside approval. That is the exact reason why they stop treating you like an easy target. It is not because they suddenly became kind or thoughtful people. It is because you have become emotionally unavailable for their manipulation. And that is one of the strongest signs that you have truly broken free from their control. The moment they realize they can no longer dictate your emotional world is the moment they begin to understand that they have genuinely lost their power over you. Sign number 2. Their manipulation becomes desperate and predictable. Another deeply revealing sign that a narcissist is losing their grip on you is that their manipulation becomes increasingly desperate and surprisingly predictable. In the beginning stages of the relationship, their tactics often seem subtle, sneaky, and confusing. They may alternate between giving you excessive affection and throwing harsh criticism your way. They might make you question your own memory through gaslighting, use guilt to influence your everyday decisions, or withdraw emotionally whenever they do not get their way. These behaviors are carefully designed to keep you emotionally invested and constantly uncertain about yourself. Because you do not yet recognize the pattern, you may spend countless hours trying to understand what went wrong or wondering how you can make the relationship feel safe again. The narcissist depends heavily on this confusion because a confused person is much easier to manage and control than a confident one. As time passes and you begin learning more about narcissistic behavior patterns, something very important starts to change inside you. You no longer react the exact same way you used to. Instead of immediately defending yourself against false accusations, you take a pause and recognize the manipulation taking place. Instead of chasing after them during their silent treatment, you simply allow the silence to remain. Instead of believing every single criticism they throw at you, you evaluate whether it reflects reality or simply serves their desperate need for control. This emotional awareness completely changes the dynamic between you. The narcissist notices that the techniques, which once worked almost effortlessly, are no longer producing the same results. That realization often creates a sense of panic inside them because control is one of the absolute foundations of narcissistic behavior. When they sense that they are losing their influence, they rarely stop manipulating altogether. Instead, they often double down and intensify their efforts. You might notice more frequent guilt trips, exaggerated emotional reactions, sudden bursts of affection after periods of deep cruelty, or dramatic stories specifically designed to make you feel responsible for their happiness. They may even create completely unnecessary conflicts just to test whether they can still provoke an emotional response out of you. Some narcissists begin contacting your mutual friends or family members, hoping to pressure you indirectly from other angles. Others alternate between acting like a helpless victim and acting like a hero, depending on which role they believe will draw you back into their emotional orbit. To someone who truly understands narcissistic patterns, these behaviors become remarkably predictable over time. They are no longer mysterious or confusing. They are simply repeated, desperate attempts to regain lost control. This is one of the most empowering stages of your recovery because your perspective has fundamentally changed. You stop asking yourself why they are doing this to you, and you start asking what they are trying to accomplish with this specific behavior. That single shift changes everything about how you interact with them. You begin observing their actions instead of absorbing their negative energy. You recognize that every single manipulation attempt has a clear underlying purpose, whether it is to create guilt, induce fear, force obligation, or generate confusion. Once you identify that hidden purpose, the emotional power behind the tactic completely fades away. You become far less reactive because you understand that their behavior says much more about their own unfulfilled emotional needs than it does about your actual worth as a person. It is also vital to remember that desperation should never be mistaken for genuine personal change. A narcissist may suddenly promise to become a much better person, admit to minor mistakes, or shower you with gifts and affection after realizing you are pulling away for good. While meaningful personal growth is theoretically possible for anyone willing to engage in deep, long-term self-reflection and professional help, temporary changes driven purely by the fear of losing control are not the same as a lasting transformation. The real question you must ask yourself is not whether their words sound convincing in the moment. The real question is whether their behavior remains consistently respectful over a very long period of time. Healthy change is steady, calm, and fully accountable. On the other hand, manipulation is usually dramatic, urgent, and completely dependent on getting an immediate emotional response from you. The most powerful moment in this process comes when you realize you can almost predict every single thing they will do next because you have seen the exact same cycle play out so many times before. Instead of feeling trapped or caught off guard, you feel entirely prepared. Instead of becoming overwhelmed by every text message, false accusation, or dramatic emotional display, you recognize it as nothing more than another attempt to reopen a door that you have already chosen to close permanently. That level of calm confidence is something a narcissist deeply struggles to comprehend because it completely removes the uncertainty and vulnerability they once relied upon to rule your life. When you reach this state of clarity, their ability to affect your inner peace is officially gone, allowing you to move forward into true emotional freedom. They may continue trying different strategies, but each failed attempt only reminds them that the old version of you is gone forever. You are no longer responding from a place of fear or self-doubt. You are responding from clarity, self-respect, and true emotional strength. And when manipulation becomes predictable instead of powerful, it is one of the clearest signs that the narcissist is losing the control they once believed they would always have over your life. Sign number 3, they rewrite the story to protect their ego. One of the most common things a narcissist does after realizing they can no longer control you is rewrite the story to protect their fragile ego. This behavior often confuses people deeply because it can seem as though the narcissist genuinely believes their own false version of events. The truth is that narcissistic personalities have an intense, desperate need to preserve a positive self-image at all costs. Admitting that they manipulated, lied, controlled, or emotionally harmed someone would create overwhelming feelings of deep shame that they simply struggle to tolerate. Rather than confronting that inner discomfort, they often change the narrative entirely. Suddenly, they become the tragic victim, and you become the major problem. The relationship is no longer remembered by them as a series of manipulative behaviors, but rather as a story in which they were misunderstood, mistreated, or unfairly abandoned by you. This rewritten version allows them to avoid all accountability while protecting the public image they desperately want others and themselves to believe. You may notice that they begin telling friends, family members, or mutual acquaintances a very different version of what actually happened. Important details mysteriously disappear from the story. Your natural emotional reactions are taken completely out of context, and your healthy attempts to establish basic boundaries are portrayed as acts of cruelty or extreme selfishness. They may describe you as cold, unstable, ungrateful, or impossible to please, all while presenting themselves as the patient martyr who tried everything possible to make the relationship work. This is often a desperate attempt to preserve social validation and avoid facing the uncomfortable reality that someone finally refused to tolerate their abusive behavior. If they can convince the world that you were the ultimate problem, they do not have to face the painful possibility that their own actions directly led to the demise of the relationship. This rewriting of history can be incredibly painful to witness, especially when you know the complete truth. You may feel a powerful urge to defend yourself, explain every tiny detail, or try to convince everyone in your social circle of what really happened behind closed doors. That reaction is completely understandable because being falsely portrayed to others can feel deeply unfair and violating. However, one of the most vital lessons in recovering from narcissistic relationships is understanding that not every false narrative deserves your precious energy. People who truly know your real character will often judge you by your consistent, long-term actions rather than by someone else's bitter accusations. Constantly chasing down every single rumor or trying to correct every lie can keep you emotionally tethered to the very person you are trying to heal from. A narcissist often fully expects you to react to these distortions because your emotional response reassures them that they still hold influence over you. If you become completely consumed with proving your innocence to the world, they remain right at the center of your attention. But when you choose peace instead of engaging in endless, exhausting arguments, something truly remarkable happens. You begin fully reclaiming your emotional independence. You realize that your true identity is not determined by someone else's biased opinion or by the fairy tale story they tell the world. Your self-worth becomes firmly grounded in your own personal values, your own authentic experiences, and the loyal people who have consistently witnessed your integrity over time. It is also important to understand that rewriting the story is not always a consciously calculated act of deception. In many cases, it simply reflects the powerful psychological defenses that protect the narcissist from being overwhelmed by their own subconscious shame. Accepting full responsibility would require them to confront deeply painful, ugly truths about themselves. For many narcissistic individuals, that level of deep self-reflection is almost impossible to achieve. Changing the narrative becomes an automatic way for them to reduce inner discomfort rather than a genuine search for factual truth. Recognizing this underlying reality does not excuse the emotional harm it causes, but it can help you stop taking their twisted version of events as a personal attack that you must constantly fight against. Your absolute greatest strength during this delicate stage is remaining firmly anchored in reality. Keep trusting your own lived experiences, your own valid memories, and the immense personal growth you have achieved along the way. You do not need permission or approval from the narcissist to know what really happened. You do not need them to validate your deep pain before your healing becomes real and complete. Their rewritten story may temporarily protect their delicate ego, but it can never erase the objective truth of your personal journey. The exact moment you stop seeking validation from the person who consistently refused to give it to you is the moment you take back your personal power once and for all. While they continue rewriting the past to avoid personal accountability, you move forward with complete clarity, ultimate emotional freedom, and a beautiful life that is no longer defined by their warped version of reality. Sign number 4. They search for new sources of validation. Another powerful sign that a narcissist recognizes they have truly lost control over you is that they begin aggressively searching for brand new sources of validation. This behavior can be extremely confusing to watch because on the surface, it may appear as though they have moved on effortlessly or that they never actually cared about the relationship in the first place. You might see them entering a new romantic relationship almost immediately, surrounding themselves with a whole new group of friends, becoming unusually active on social media platforms, or constantly seeking attention and praise from anyone willing to admire them. If you do not fully understand narcissistic behavior patterns, it is very easy to interpret this sudden shift as painful proof that you were completely insignificant to them. In reality, it often reflects something entirely different beneath the surface. The narcissist is frantically attempting to replace the massive amount of emotional supply they once received from you because they have come to the painful realization that they can no longer access it. Narcissistic supply refers to the endless attention, admiration, validation, or heightened emotional reactions that help maintain a narcissist's remarkably fragile sense of self. This constant supply does not always come in the form of positive praise. Even intense arguments, emotional pleading, outbursts of jealousy, or your repeated attempts to explain yourself can provide the exact attention they crave. As long as they can successfully influence your emotions, they feel a comforting sense of power, importance, and control. But when you establish firm boundaries, drastically reduce contact, or completely stop responding to their emotional manipulation, that steady source of validation begins to disappear into thin air.